Now that the systematic review is completed, the researchers now have to put the systematic review into a report manner for dissemination. And this always begins with the introduction section of the systematic review paper. And the introduction should clarify the topic under investigation, the scope, so how wide of a range of this particular topic are the researchers of the systematic review going to focus on, and is there a particular rationale for conducting this review. One such approach is to address one or two major concerns in a particular field of study. For example, if there is any sort of concern or undecided trend with respect to inspiratory muscle fatigue for people with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease in the field for respiratory therapists, then this might serve as a justified rationale for initiating the systematic review. Other issues in a field might include debates, other controversies, theories that might form the foundation for a particular type of healthcare treatment, but might not have a great deal of empirical, which are direct observation studies to demonstrate, could serve as a valid reason for conducting the systematic review, as well as inconsistent findings in the scientific literature. In that case, the systematic review would be a very effective vehicle for assembling all of those studies to examine if there is a pattern, if there is truly an inconsistency, and their systematic review will assist in getting to many of the reasons why such inconsistencies may exist. The introductory section will also summarize how the research inside the review will be structured, and that deals with respect to the individual topics, and that's tied back to the scope of establishing the systematic review to begin with, and an establishment of the argument for the need for the review is going to be based upon how well formulated the rationale is, as well as the effectiveness that the authors here can build in precedents through the effective use of citations of previous studies to formulate the basis for doing the systematic review. The method section is essentially a summary of much of what was discussed here in this unit, and so the details regarding the article search process must be articulated here, outlining the unique databases that were accessed, if there was more than one investigator that access those databases, and what the very specific search terms. This is basically a list of the words and the terms provided in the methods section. Did the researchers zero in on a particular range of publication years? So was it open to all studies, or did the researchers narrow their focus on a 15-year period, as well as detailing the criteria? A very important element to the systematic review are what are called borderline cases, and so those are research studies that might be very close to being excluded with respect to exclusion criteria, but possess other elements that would justify inclusion. And so oftentimes that is determined as the researchers pour through the research papers, and as those decisions are made, those decisions should be documented and included in the methods section. And so once again here, the borderline case might not quite meet the inclusion criteria, but has potentially useful data, or might have something that might lean it into the exclusion category, but the data within it might be very valuable to not include, too valuable to not include that study. And so, whether, either way, the justification for how those borderline cases were managed should be provided here. The flow diagram, as illustrated earlier in this unit through the PRISMA approach, must be included in the methods section, and that basically provides a graphic to the article sifting process. The two necessary elements in the results section is the data extraction table. Now, in some cases, if the data extraction table is very large and that it extends into multiple pages, oftentimes the systematic review will include the data extraction table at the end of the article as an appendix, but regardless, it must be included, as well as the forest plots. And so those plots of the individual effect sizes, normalized effect sizes determined from those individual studies as outlined on the previous, earlier in this unit. There must be text within the results section that provides context and explanation depicted in the forest plots. And so we don't just put the forest plots in and let the reader figure it out. The accompanying text that is written in the results section does not necessarily spend a great deal of time interpreting the implications of the findings, but just explains in words what those forest plots are depicting. The discussion section is that area that does not necessarily reiterate the numerical values necessarily. It may include some, but is focused primarily on summarizing and discussing the findings. And the discussion section can take on a number of different approaches here. And so the researchers can evaluate previous theories, can challenge previous evidence, all within the scientific literature. Are the conclusions that the researchers of the systematic review justified based upon the evidence in the results section? And so in writing the systematic review, it's important to keep in mind that the discussion section, the statements in the discussion section should be based upon the outcome of the results. It's very common for the discussion section to address various strengths, the important elements that highlighted new information as a result of the meta-analysis or a new unique way of examining some of these variables, as well as highlighting limitations of the research articles themselves and the actual systematic review. All research articles, all systematic reviews will have inherent limitations, and so those should be at least addressed, but should not, I repeat, should not be the major focus of the discussion section. The discussion section is the pertinent place to propose new concepts, to suggest future directions, and as well as relating any of the conclusions, relating any of the discussion back to the rationale for doing the review, and back to any of the research hypotheses that may have been proposed earlier at the end of the introductory section. So this ends our final video for our unit on the systematic review.